A lot of times we tend to talk about reform efforts in mathematics education and that we have new and upcoming ideas here in the last 10, 20, even 30 years, but they are actually ones that have already been discussed early in the 1900s or late 1800s. So the action research process that I had referred to in the beginning looks something like this. It's 4 components. Identifying an area of focus is where we start. We collect data on that particular topic. We analyze and interpret data, and we develop an action plan. Yes, as Maria says, everything old is new again. That's right. So what's interesting about the action research process is we just simply become curious about something in our classes. And so we identify that that's something, and then we go out and collect data. And there's all kinds of sources that we have available to us as teachers. And that data, once it's analyzed, helps us then inform what the problem really is. And we develop some sort of action plan as we become reflective about our own practice. So for today's webinar, we're going to primarily focus on how we can identify an area of focus and what is entailed in doing so. So an area of focus should involve teaching and learning, and that's actually what we as educators are most interested in anyway. It should be within our locus of control. We have complete control over our classrooms and our students. And so what's nice about action researchers is that we can conduct these research studies within our own classrooms and thus have control over the research scenario. We're also interested in wanting to improve or change something, and it's something that we have passion for, that we become curious about. So all these things kind of weigh into our identifying an area of focus to study. So for now, I've talked a few minutes, and I want you to think about if you have a few topics that you would like to perhaps engage in a research project in, something you would like to study. And if you could just write down those 3 possible phenomena that you would like to investigate and maybe type one of those, the most interesting one, in the chat room. And I'll hold for a few minutes while you guys type something in. Developmental courses, developmental students in general is definitely interesting. Good question, Maria. It's an online calculus. Online courses are obviously being embraced by our community colleges, and so now more and more I'm hearing calculus courses are being now offered online or in hybrid formats. So it'd be interesting to study that. I missed the first question by Chris. He asked what kind of research is not considered action research. Well, action research, since it's primarily focused on the classroom by the teacher themselves, an action research, something that's not action research would be perhaps when a researcher comes into a classroom and they are not the teacher and they do not have control over the setting or the students. They are a third party in this circle. So that would be something that is not considered action research. So anything that is teacher-focused, teacher-based, and the teacher as the researcher constitutes action research. Use of manipulatives, yes. Oh, you're welcome, Chris. Hey, feel free to keep typing in on the chat room with more ideas, and we're taking note of these ideas. So I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next piece of the talk, still identifying the area of focus. Oftentimes we have these ideas for what we want to study simply from our experience in the classroom. A student says something that's interesting, or we have new teaching strategies that we would like to use, and we wonder the effects of those teaching strategies. But so what we often do is we kind of focus internally. I call this internal reflection. We simply look to see, based on our own experience, what's happening. And then at some point in time, we need to reflect externally. So let me talk about both of those. So internal reflection is, how do you know this is a problem? Many of you guys typed in the chat room various topics that you would like to study, but how is it that you really know that this is a problem and that it's something worthy of studying? What have you anecdotally experienced? What are your beliefs about that particular topic, and what is your knowledge about it and the context of the idea? And so this is sort of an internal mechanism to be able to help you decide of an area of focus. Externally, you're looking for what do others say about that particular problem you've identified. This is where we go back to the research literature on trying to find what it is that other people have studied and how does it relate to our particular topic. What kind of findings have they put forth that would help us have some sort of answers to our topic that we've identified. And so this is where we go to research journals, online journals, professional organizations, and so forth to get some sort of background on the literature and what it currently says. So I have another polling question for you. Which one of the following journals do you read regularly? So Maria, thank you. Go ahead and select one of these, and I'll hold while you guys are making your choices. Well, it's not surprising that we're an AMATYC group here listening in, so that 88% of us, 92% of us will read the Mathematic Educator, formerly known as the AMATYC Review. But it's nice to see that you're also, several of you regularly read Mathematics Teacher, and JRME, that's the Journal for Research in Mathematics Education, is the premier journal for mathematics education that's published by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Right, thank you for your information. We'll go ahead and go on to the next slide, Maria. All right, as we think about reflecting internally and externally, we at some point in time need to formulate some research questions. Once we've identified this area of focus, we have to develop research questions that will allow us to more specifically study this focus, this content that we are interested in. Now, the research question or questions of a study is an extremely critical piece of the research design. It is the locus that everything is based on. The choices you make in the data collection efforts, the choices you make in the data analysis efforts are all tied directly to the research question or questions of the study. So it's very important to have a well-formulated question, and it informs all parts of the study. So here are some samples of research questions. Obviously, this is just a few that I thought of off the top of my head. I mentioned exponential growth. So the first one is kind of one I'm always interested in long term. In what ways do students think about exponential growth? I think about this all the time. Every time I teach exponential growth, whether it's to intermediate algebra students or college algebra students or pre-calculus students, I've just become very, very curious about how students understand and teachers understand exponentiation. Another one might be, what are developmental students' mathematical beliefs in effect? There's a few studies that are out there, and a few more I know that are being conducted with community colleges, one in which I actually start data collection with a PhD student next week on arithmetic students' mathematical beliefs in effect. And so it's very enlightening to kind of see how students think about mathematics, what kind of views they have about their courses, their teacher, their textbook, the content, all kinds of things. Another one might be what are the problem-solving behaviors of college algebra students? There's a lot of problem-solving literature out there, but not necessarily one literature that focuses on community college algebra students. There are university college algebra students. So these might be some examples of some research questions you could engage in. So we've talked about having a focus. We've talked about the internal and external reflection and research questions. And those three components kind of funnel into our efforts for data collection. Once we have things formulated well and our ideas in mind for what we want to study, we know what the research literature says about a particular topic, and we know what we think and why this particular topic is a problem, we are then ready for data collection. And there's all kinds of data collection methods that exist. And I mentioned that action research was mostly qualitative, and so it would make sense that the data collection methods we chose were also ones consistent with qualitative research. So an example might be we survey students. An example survey is maybe to use some that are already developed. VAMS, for example, which stands for Views About Mathematics Survey. It's a survey that any level of students can take that asks students questions about how they view mathematics as a discipline. Things like, is it the teacher's responsibility to make sure that students understand the concepts by explaining as well as possible? Or is it their view that students need to be engaging in important dialogue during class? There's all kinds of questions that we could be asking. Another simple survey that we all have access to, and we probably already do in our classes, is something called a 1-minute paper. And I know you've heard of that, but that could be a way to collect some data and get some information, more so than just kind of looking over what students say. If you haven't heard of the 1-minute paper, it really is just something, it's like kind of ticket out, so to speak, ticket out of class, where students write maybe a topic during that particular lesson that was most clear, maybe another one that was the muddiest point that was made during class, and they just take 1 minute to fill that out, and on their way out the door they hand it to the teacher. And if the teacher is thinking of this opportunity as a research investigation, they can be using some of that data received from the 1-minute paper to formulate some conceptions about how students are thinking about the topic at hand. Another one we have access